Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and today I have the honor of doing a bracelet that was designed by one of our customers, Susan McAndrew, and it uses our Ava beads along with some Magatamas, and she's calling this the AvaTama Bracelet. And if you need any of the materials to do any of this AvaTama Bracelet, you can go to the left-hand side here. We'll do a little drop-down menu that has the links to the different materials that are used. If you don't see the little drop-down menu, depending on your device, in the description of the video, there's usually a little down arrow that says show more because the description is longer than what is shown. When you click that down arrow, it'll give you links to all of the different materials as well. So for her design, Susan, like I said, is using Ava beads. You're going to need approximately 8 to 12 Ava beads depending on the size of your wrist. Here I have the jet red luster, which is that dark green color, and together I will be using the metallic violet Ava beads. In addition to the Ava bead, it uses our RounDuo bead, which is a 2-hold round, and I'm using it in the zinc iris color. On the sides, the fun thing that Susan added were the Magatamas, hence the name, the AvaTama Bracelet. And I'm going to be using those in the matte dark raspberry color, which is the same that I used here. I think that'll play nicely with that lighter purple as well. Other than that, I have some 15O seed beads in the galvanized champagne color. And then I have some Potomac crystal rounds in the crystal Labrador color. So these crystal Potomac beads are actually coated in the Czech Republic, which is kind of fun because most of the beads that we manufacture are done in the Czech Republic as well. So it's a nice bright silver coating. I'm going to close the whole bracelet off with a faceted Potomac crystal button, and I have that in the crystal AB color. I'll add a little bit of color with my seed beads to the middle of it. Handy wise, you want to have a thread burner or a thread zap. Whatever type of burner you have is fine, as long as they are a cord cutter or a thread burner. And that's because I'm using Wildfire beading thread in 0.006 in the green color. I also like to have handy a needle nose pliers or a bent flat nose pliers. This is just squeeze down the end of the thread once you burn it with a burner, which is going to allow it to have a nice kind of flattened out edge, and that's going to make it easier to thread your needles. We will be using 2 needles, and you can use size 10, 11, or 12 needles for this project. I'll be using size 10 needles. I also have near me some super new glue to kind of glue off the end of the thread, and I have a nice workable surface that I'm working on. Usually as I'm kind of moving around creating designs or trying out the patterns, I work on my bead on it board too. So to get started with all of these different materials, we are going to be using all of them at the start except for the crystal. The bracelet again is going to be 2 needles, and we're going to cut about 5 feet of our beading thread with our thread zap. Put 1 needle on each end of the thread and pour out little piles of the other beads so we can get ready to start the AvaTama bracelet. So again, to get started, I have my 2 needles on my 5 feet of beading thread. And I'm actually going to start with my crystal. To add the crystal, add to your thread. Again, we have 2 needles, 1 on either side, and you want to make sure that they are equal distance and the tails are the same length. We're going to add 4 15O seed beads onto one of the needles, and then we're going to pick up the crystal button. To pick up the crystal button, we're going to go through 1 hole of the button, and you can see here from the back side that it kind of is faceted. So we're going to go through the front side, which has a little bit of a cup to it, and come out the back side, which is flat. I want to come out with 1 needle across from the other. So rather than having them side by side, I want them to come out on a diagonal. Pull the needles, making sure that the thread is even, and those seed beads are just going to sit right in the middle of that little button. After the button, then we're going to go ahead and add 3 seed beads on each needle, both the right needle and the left needle. If you're not as good with working with your left, I would suggest to keep trying. If it's a major kind of time slower down, you can switch over hands and work strictly with your right hand. Just kind of put the left needle down as you're working and switch. As I'm coming at the end here, I'm going to put on my first of my RounDuo beads. So the RounDuos, if you haven't used them before, they're a 5mm bead with 2 holes. They have 1 hole right beside the other. I'm going to take 1 needle through 1 hole and 1 needle through the other hole. As I come out then the other side of the RounDuo bead, I'm also going to add 3 seed beads on each side again. After I have the 3 seed beads on each side, it's time to start actually adding my Ava beads. So the Ava beads are going to sit kind of cupping around one of the RounDuo beads. When I'm adding the Avas, we're going to start with the Ava pointed down. So we're going to start with the Ava pointed like a V. I'm going to take 1 needle through that bottom hole and go from the right side to the left side. And then I'm going to take the other needle through that same bottom hole and go from the left side to the right side. Pull the threads and make sure that you're still in the middle of your thread and that it hasn't shifted as you're working on it. That should bring that Ava bead kind of sitting exactly right so the point is touching the RounDuo bead. If you are using the Toho brand seed bead, it makes it off just a tiny little bit. The Miyuki brand is what's going to sit right on there. That's what I use to design. On the sides of the Ava, there is another hole on each side, so kind of 1 in each leg of the Ava beads here. What we're going to do is add the Magatamas on the sides of the Ava beads. The Magatamas can be a little bit tricky because of their shape. You can kind of see they're cut on a slant there and they have a hole. For the first Ava bead, you want to pick up your Magatamas so that the longer side is at the bottom. So here you can see the longer side is kind of at the top. I'm going to flip that over so the long side is at the bottom of 3 beads, making them sit the same. So here you want them to look like little shoes. I'm going to put them onto my right needle with them all facing in the same direction. I'm then going to take my needle and go through the top hole of the Ava bead, coming out towards the center of the Ava. I'm going to put that needle down then and pick up the other needle. So this time I have my left needle. Again, grab out 3 Ava beads. Make sure they're all facing so that the big end is facing down. Again, you can kind of think of them as little shoes. And you're going to put those on as well. So each side gets 3 of the Avas, or 3 of the Magatamas rather, on the side of the Avas. This one then, the left-hand side, goes through the top hole of the Ava bead on the left and pull in. That's going to give the Magatamas kind of look like, they almost look like the victory flying V there, with the Magatamas sitting on the sides of the Ava bead. It's now time to add a RounDuo into the middle so that way we can progress and add the next Ava bead. To do so, we're going to keep it simple. You can see I kind of played around with decorating, but I actually really liked the simplicity of Susan's design, so I kind of switched it back from trying to decorate up and make the middle a little fancier. So on your right needle, you're going to put a 15, RounDuo, 15. Let that drop down the needle a little bit. With the left needle then, you're going to do a 15, go into the same RounDuo bead through the second hole, and then do another 15. What this is going to create is an Xing effect. That's going to go on right in the middle then of our Ava bead. So you can see it nicely right there, and we're going to have it occurring here too. Pick up my needles, give a nice little tight pull. And now we're going to put on our next Ava bead. So when we put on the Ava bead this time, we're going to have the Ava shaped like an A rather than the V way. The needle that's on the right-hand side is going to go through the right-hand leg of the Ava. The needle on the left goes through the left-hand side of the Ava. I'm going to pull those down so you can see that nice kind of open V effect that's going on. I want the Avas to sit nicely next to one another, kind of facing in the same direction, so on the sides they point in. To do so now on this second set of the Magatamas, I'm going to pick up the Magatamas when they're facing the opposite direction. So I don't want them to face like a shoe. I want the tops to actually be up. You can see that one kind of faces down. I need to flip that over to make sure that I'm facing them all in the same direction. With the right needle then, go ahead and pick them up and go through the top hole of the Ava bead, going from the right side to the left side. Stick that needle down, pick up your Magatamas. Again, pick up 3 that are facing so that the wider or longer part is at the top. Put those on and crisscross through that same top hole of the Ava bead, making sure you're not going through any of the Magatamas on the opposite side. Give a nice little tight pull to tighten up the Magatamas along the sides of the project. You can see that's the first step, but it's actually going to be continued throughout the bracelet. To progress to the next section of our Ava beads, we're simply going to repeat what we did right after the clasp, adding in 3 of our 15s, 1 hole of the RounDuo, and 3 15s. Let that drop down next to the Ava, and do the same thing with the left needle. 3 15s through the second hole of the RounDuo, so the one that was unoccupied, and after that then 3 more seed beads, and let that drop down. And pull my threads nice and tight here. And you can see that kind of fits perfectly then again right on the top of that Ava bead, that the 3 beads sit, so the Ava bead is almost touching the middle of the RounDuo. To get the next Ava bead on then, we're just going to go back to that kind of second clip where we have the Ava facing like a V, and we're going to crisscross the needles through the 1 hole, one going from right to left and the other from left to right. Pull it nice and down, and then we'll get ready to add our Magatamas. Again, just a reminder, the Magatamas get added so that the first time when it's facing like a V, you're going to add them so that the long portion is sitting down. So again, they look like a little kind of shoe. It's kind of a silly way to remember it, but it works. When I pick up the Ava bead and it's shaped like an A, the second one, after our RounDuo in the middle, that's where I pick up the Magatamas facing in the opposite direction so that they're facing up, like this one happens to be, that you can see the long end towards the top, which I'm at the bottom one, so I'm flipping those over so they all look the same. If you happen to pick up an Ava in the wrong direction, no one's really going to know except for you, but it does lay nicer later on in the bracelet when we go back and add the crystals. Again, you repeat whatever you do with your right needle, with your left needle, coming out the center then of the Ava. Give a nice little tight pull. And then we're going to progress to our next RounDuo bead and our next Ava. So at the very end here, what I actually am going to do after you add all your Avas and your Magatamas in is get ready to do your clasp. For a standard size wrist, I ended up using 5 groupings of my Avas or 10 altogether. And this is going to be about a 7-inch bracelet. If you have trouble kind of fitting the bracelet or you're looking for a smaller size, You can start right with the Ava beads. You don't have to do the round duos first. That's kind of one of your options. The other thing is actually to shorten it one. For my wrist, I would have actually shortened it one whole Ava section because I have a smaller wrist. But going standard size, you're probably going to end up with right about 10 of your Ava beads or 5 of those little kind of AvaTama sections. At the end here, I'm coming out my last RounDuo bead, and I'm done with the Avas and done with the Magatamas, so I kind of cleaned up my bead mat a little bit, and I'm just left with my crystals and my 15-0 seed beads. I'm going to do a loop that goes around the crystal button with the 15-0s by just picking up one of the needles, and with my right hand adding a bunch of the 15-0s onto the needle. These 15-0s then are going to be the loop for my button. If you want to and you prefer, some people prefer to use 11-0 seed beads for their button loop, you can do that. In Susan's original picture that she sent to me, she actually used wire guards and a clasp for her bracelet. So she didn't use a button, she used the wire guard and a toggle clasp. So that's another idea. If you were doing that, you'd do the wire guard on right now as well as the clasp. Once you have enough seed beads on that you're certain that the button will fit through, you're going to go ahead and make your, or close off your loop basically for it to go through. So to do so, you're going to come back down the round trio, going through the opposite hole. So I'm coming out the right hole here, I'm going to go down the left hole. Give a nice tight pull. On the left side then I'm going to pick up that thread that's there and feed it back through all of these seed beads that I just added on as my loop. This is not only going to bring my thread to the other side, which I need to happen, but also reinforce this loop, getting at least 2 strands through it. If you want to reinforce it more than that, you can do so. If you are working with a size needle, you'll get through that 3rd time, but you might have a hard time after 3. So in that case, if you do want to do more strands through it, you can go ahead and switch off to a size 12 needle. On the opposite side too, I'm going to come down the opposite side of the RounDuo bead. Once I'm through, I'm going to make sure that there's no extra thread showing. In this bracelet, because of the Magatamas, the thread kind of sits a little funky at first. So you want to make sure also, a little side note, as you're progressing on the bracelet, just to make sure to kind of push them all down and make sure you don't have any extra thread showing. To add in the crystals are going to sit right on the sides of the RounDuo beads. To get to that point, the thread and needle coming back the right hand side here are going to go back through the 15-0s above the Ava beads right after the RounDuos. We're going to do this on both the left hand side and on the right hand side of the project. Coming out the seed beads in on either side, we're going to feed our thread and needle through the Magatamas. The Magatamas only have one hole, so you don't need to worry too hard about that. When you're on the sides then of the RounDuo beads, you're going to put on 2 of your 15-0s, 1 crystal, 2 15-0s. Let that kind of drop down, and then I'm going to feed my thread through the next set of Magatamas. A lot of times you'll be able to get through 2 of them, and it won't want to go through the 3rd. You'll have to kind of take a break with your needle and pull it through the 3rd. The Magatamas will almost kind of cup around the last seed bead. When you get to the opposite side, between the sets of the Avas, take your needle through the 3 seed beads before the RounDuo, as well as the RounDuo, and the 3 seed beads after the RounDuo. And then we're ready to begin again. So we're going to go through our Magatama beads. As we come out the Magatamas on the sides of the RounDuos, 2 15-0s, 1 crystal, 2 15s get added, and then through the next set of the Magatama beads and out. Once I do this a couple times on the right hand side, I have it done twice there. I'm going to flip over and do it on the left hand side, adding that bling in as well. So I like to sew away from me generally, which I don't do a lot in the video. It's because it's easier to sew towards me for the camera angle. But when I'm out next to the RounDuo bead here, again, 2 seed beads, 1 crystal, 2 seed beads. In her design, Susan had originally put a 6mm bead, so you could do that as well. I wanted to add a little bling to it, so I decided to add some of those Potomac crystal rounds. After I'm out the Magatama there, I'm going to sew down the line. This also tightens the bracelet. Between the Avas and the Magatamas, it's actually a fairly substantial and has a nice weight to it. Going down then through all of the beads here, along the center, go through the Magatamas here, tighten it up, and then add in your crystal. And down the Magatamas on the other side. Again, everything that's done with the right needle is done with the left needle. And we use this opportunity to, like I said, kind of tighten up what we're doing here and adding that little bit of bling in right along the sides of the Magatamas. So continue on working, excuse me, back through your bracelet the whole way down till we get to towards the end, and then we'll have an opportunity to reinforce our button. So at this point I'm done adding my little bling and my crystals in, and I've done it on all of those 5 Ava bead sections. And I have my last thread on the left hand side coming out my RounDuo. On the right hand side I'm coming out my Magatamas. I'm going to go through the 15s just like I did the opposite side, just like if I was continuing on with the bracelet, and through the RounDuo bead. When I come out the RounDuo, I'm going to reinforce my clasp. To do this, go through your 3 15s right before the button, as well as the whole of the button. And out the top of the button. Once I'm through the top hole of the button, and of course this button wants to fight me a little bit with getting me through there, but once I'm out that top hole of the button, if you can go into the seed beads right away, that's great, because otherwise it's really hard to get into the seed beads because it does have a slight cut to it or a slight indentation. Go down then on the opposite side coming out and go through all the 15s on the other side of the button. If you want to, you can reinforce one more time. I'm not going to worry about that since I already have 2 threads going through it. And the cool thing when you work with 2 needles, even though it can be a pain until you get the hang of it, is you simply tie off the threads then. So you don't have to weave the threads back through. You can if you want. Some people still do. I'm literally just going to tie a square knot right over left, left over right. If you're somebody that likes or uses glue, you're going to take your super new glue, do a dab of glue there. What I'm going to do then is take my thread burner, burn my edges down or my threads off, leaving just a tiny bit of a tail. That tail then that's there, right there, you can kind of see it. I'm going to burn that flat against the bead, making sure that I'm not burning through the knot that I created. What this does is causes, I'll show you here on this end of the thread, you'll be able to see it better. It causes a little balling up of the thread that you can see there, and that's going to prevent the knot that you tied from actually coming apart. so it acts as a little stopper. So if you don't have a thread burner, that is one thing that, or a thread zap, one thing I could not kind of do without. I gave away my scissor, or gave up kind of the scissors long ago, unless I'm traveling and can't take the battery and stuff with me. Once you're done, then you are done with your fun AvaTama bracelet. And I really thank Susan for kind of throwing the Magatamas back out there. And I should have mentioned at the beginning of the video, they're the long Magatamas rather than the short Magatamas, which look like teardrops. But again, thank you so much. I love when people give ideas of the different beads that we're doing, when we get an opportunity to kind of highlight our customers and show what they do and they create with our beads as well. That's why we create them, to give you guys inspiration and to play around and give fun ideas with them as well. Again, if you need any of the materials to do Susan McAndrew's AvaTama bracelet, you can go back to the beginning of the video to the little drop downs. If your phone doesn't have those little drop downs for you, you can always go below the video to the description of the video and do that little show more button. When you do the show more button, it'll give you links to the materials as well. As always, you can stay connected with us on Facebook. You can stay connected with us by shopping on PotomacBeads.com or your local Potomac Bead Company. You can also join us by subscribing to this YouTube channel. You'll get regular updates on videos such as this, as well as new product releases and new ideas and what's going on in the beading industry. You can also join our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. There's a great way to interact with different jewelry makers, whether or not they're seed beaders or wire workers or different jewelry artists, just seeing the vast majority or the vast diversity of things that people create, as well as it's a really great interactive forum, people answering questions from one another, helping each other out, and really giving ideas as well. As always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have fun making the AvaTama bracelet by Susan McAndrews.